The friend zone is one of the most frustrating places a man can find himself in, because on the surface, everything looks close. You talk, you laugh, you spend time together. There is comfort, there is familiarity, there is emotional access, and that is exactly why it hurts. Because from the outside, it looks like you are almost there, but in reality, you are often much farther away than you think. That is what makes the friend zone so confusing. You can feel important to her, but not desired by her. You can be trusted by her, but not chosen by her. You can be emotionally valuable, but romantically invisible. And most men handle this situation in the worst possible way. They try harder. They become more available, more helpful, more patient, more understanding. They listen more, give more, do more, wait more. They believe that if they just prove enough loyalty, enough kindness, enough consistency, she will eventually see them differently. But that is usually not how attraction works. Attraction is not a reward for effort. It is not a prize given to the most accommodating man. It is not something you earn by slowly becoming indispensable in every way except the one that matters most. That is the first truth you need to understand if you want to get out of the friend zone. The friend zone is not created because you are too nice. It is usually created because the emotional dynamic between you and her has become too safe, too predictable, too platonic, and too one-sided. You stopped being seen as a man she could lose, and started being seen as a man who will always remain available. That changes everything, because desire needs tension, it needs polarity, it needs uncertainty, it needs the feeling that something romantic could happen, not the comfort of knowing that nothing ever will. And once a woman becomes certain that you are emotionally invested while asking for nothing, risking nothing, and leading nowhere, she often relaxes into the safest category possible: useful, trusted, stable, but not sexually or romantically compelling. That is the friend zone. So if you want to get out of it, the first thing you need to stop doing is this. Stop trying to win romance through service. Stop becoming her unpaid therapist. Stop becoming her emotional cushion while she gives romantic energy elsewhere. Stop trying to make her realize your worth through patience alone. Stop rewarding a dynamic that quietly hurts you. Because the longer you stay in a role, the more that role hardens. And the friend zone is, above all, a role. It is a pattern, a frame, a repeated emotional structure. You show up the same way, she responds the same way, you accept the same position. And over time, both of you start acting as if that position is natural. But it is not fixed forever. It can change. The problem is that it will not change just because you want it to. It changes only when the dynamic changes. So let's talk about how that actually happens. The first step is brutal but necessary. You have to be honest about where you stand, not where you hope you stand, not where you imagine you could stand if only she understood, not where you stood in one flirty moment 3 months ago. Where you stand now. Does she treat you like a potential partner? Or like emotional furniture? Does she make space for one-on-one time that feels personal and intentional? Or are you always the comfortable backup presence? Does she flirt with you? Or only confide in you? Does she invest in the connection? Or mostly receive from it? Does she create tension? Or only comfort? You need to answer that clearly, because many men stay trapped in the friend zone simply because they refuse to read reality. They confuse friendliness with chemistry, openness with desire, attention with attraction, emotional intimacy with romantic interest. These things can overlap, but they are not the same. A woman can enjoy your company deeply and still not feel drawn to you romantically. And once you accept that, you stop making emotional decisions based on fantasy. Now you can act strategically. The second step is this. You have to stop overinvesting in a platonic frame. This is where most men struggle, because they fear that pulling back will make them lose her. But here is the truth. If the only way to keep her in your life is to keep accepting a role that quietly weakens you, then you are not building attraction anyway. You are preserving access at the cost of self-respect, and that never ends well. Pulling back does not mean becoming rude. It does not mean punishing her. It does not mean acting cold out of bitterness. It means rebalancing your energy. If you have been texting first all the time, stop. If you have been instantly available, slow down. If you have been overly supportive while receiving little romantic investment, reduce your emotional labor. If you have been playing the role of the always there guy, step out of that role. Why? Because as long as she continues getting the benefits of your romantic investment without having to meet you as a romantic possibility, there is no pressure for the dynamic to evolve. You are feeding the exact structure that keeps you trapped. A lot of men think, but if I pull back, won't she just drift away? Maybe. And if that happens, that itself is information. Because one of the most painful truths in the friend zone is this: sometimes the relationship only works because you are over-contributing. If you stop carrying it and it collapses, then it was never balanced in the first place. That is not failure, that is clarity. And clarity is always better than false hope. Now let's move to the next step, which is where change becomes possible. You need to reintroduce masculine tension. This is the part many men skip. They stop overinvesting, which is good, but then they replace it with distance and silence only, which is incomplete. To move out of the friend zone, she has to start seeing you differently. That requires a shift in how you show up. Romantic energy does not appear because you explain your feelings in a long emotional speech. It appears when the interaction starts carrying a different charge. That means you need to become more grounded, more playful, more self-directed, less approval-seeking, less emotionally dependent, and more willing to create subtle tension. That does not mean using lines or fake alpha behavior. It means changing your emotional posture. Instead of always leaning in, you become more centered. Instead of trying to please, you become more expressive. Instead of reacting to her, you hold your own frame. Instead of always being available, you have your own life, your own pace, your own direction. This matters because attraction is strongly influenced by perception. If she perceives you as the man who always wants something from her emotionally, she relaxes. If she starts perceiving you as a man with options, standards, boundaries, and quiet confidence, the emotional texture shifts. Now let's get practical. How do you actually create that shift? First, stop agreeing with everything. Not in a combative way, but in a real way. Many friend-zoned men become too smooth, too accommodating, too eager to maintain harmony. They flatten their personality to stay liked. That kills tension. Attraction needs friction sometimes. A woman should feel that you are a man with opinions, standards, preferences, and edge. If she says something teasing, tease back. If she makes assumptions, challenge them lightly. If she is used to you always being emotionally submissive, stop giving that energy. Not to dominate her, but to stop presenting yourself as harmless. Because harmless is often exactly how friendzone energy feels. Second, become less predictable. Predictability is comfortable, but too much predictability kills mystery. If you always respond instantly, stop. If you always say yes, sometimes say no. If you always initiate, stop carrying the rhythm alone. If you always remain emotionally available, create more space. Again, not as manipulation, as recalibration. She needs to feel that access to you is not automatic. Third, change the context of your interactions. If your relationship with her is built entirely around safe conversations, group settings, emotional support, and casual platonic comfort, then of course she experiences you platonically. So change the context. Invite her into a more intentional one-on-one setting, not, let's hang out like usual. Something with more direction. Coffee with a more personal tone, a rooftop drink, a walk at night, a playful outing that feels more like a date than a default friendship routine. Context shapes perception. When you never place the relationship in a romantic frame, you help keep it platonic. That leads to a very important point. At some stage, you need to make your interest visible, not through a giant emotional confession, not through pouring your heart out, not through a dramatic, "I've loved you all along." That almost always creates pressure, not attraction. Instead, your interest should become visible through vibe, intent, and a clear but calm move. You flirt more directly. You create more eye contact. You suggest a more date-like setting. You communicate interest with composure rather than desperation. And eventually, yes, you need clarity. Because a huge mistake friend-zoned men make is trying to escape the friend zone without ever risking anything. They want her to magically understand. They want her to make the romantic move. They want certainty before vulnerability. But romantic tension requires some willingness to step beyond the safe role. At some point, you have to give the interaction a chance to become something else. That can be as simple as, I like talking to you, but I'm not really trying to be just your emotional support guy. Let's grab a drink this week. Or, you're fun, but I'm not taking you out as just a friend. That is direct without being heavy, clear without being needy. And that is important, because the moment you communicate interest, you must do it from strength. Not like a man pleading to be chosen, like a man expressing intention and being fully ready for either answer. That emotional readiness is everything. Why? Because if she senses that your identity depends on her response, the pressure increases and attraction often decreases. But if she senses that you are simply being honest, grounded, and self-respecting, the energy is very different. Now let's address the uncomfortable possibility. What if she says no? Then you have your answer. And that answer matters more than prolonged confusion. If she clearly says she only sees you as a friend, the worst thing you can do is stay in the same role while secretly hoping time will save you. Because then you are no longer building connection. You are building resentment. You are watching her live freely while you stay emotionally stuck in a position that hurts you. That is why boundaries matter. If you genuinely want more and she clearly does not, you may need distance. Not because friendship is bad, but because friendship is not neutral when one person is romantically invested and silently suffering. Too many men think staying close proves loyalty. Often it just proves that they are afraid to let go, and fear is a terrible reason to stay. Sometimes the only real way to get out of the friend zone is to leave it completely, to step back, to rebuild your center, to stop feeding a role that no longer serves you, to let her experience your absence instead of your constant support. And here is the irony. Sometimes distance is exactly what changes perception. Not always, not magically, but sometimes, because when you are always there, your value can blur into the background. When you leave, the emotional pattern breaks. She may start seeing what your presence actually meant. She may notice the difference. She may wonder why you stopped. She may feel the loss of your energy. And sometimes only then does she begin to reevaluate you. But even if she does not, distance still helps you. Why? Because it gives you back your power. It allows you to stop orbiting around one woman's uncertainty. It forces you to invest back into yourself. It breaks the psychological addiction to hope. And that is where real change begins. Now let's talk about the biggest mindset shift you need if you want to avoid the friend zone in the future. Stop trying to build attraction from the position of already being emotionally surrendered. This is the trap. Many men meet a woman, like her deeply, become emotionally available too early, prove reliability too fast, and start acting like a boyfriend before romance has even been established. That usually creates imbalance. She receives reassurance, support, attention, patience, and consistency before she has had to experience tension, desire, uncertainty, or earned investment. So the dynamic becomes tilted from the beginning. The healthier approach is this: be warm but paced, interested but grounded, present but not overavailable, playful but not needy, direct but not overeager. Let attraction breathe. Do not rush into emotional labor. Do not become her fixer. Do not become her full-time validator. Do not build a pseudo-relationship without the benefits of a real one, because the more you invest without clarity, the easier it is to end up in the friend zone. Now, if you are already there, remember this. Your goal is not to convince her with logic. Attraction is not negotiated. Your goal is to change the dynamic enough that one of two things happens. Either she starts seeing you differently, or you stop wasting your emotional energy where it is not returned. Both are wins. That is the mature perspective. A lot of men approach the friend zone like a puzzle to solve, but it is not always a puzzle. Sometimes it is simply a mismatch, and mismatches are part of life. Not every woman you like will like you back in the same way. That does not reduce your value. It does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you were not enough. It just means the dynamic was not working. And the faster you accept that possibility, the more power you have. Because desperation dies when standards rise. When your standard becomes, I do not stay in emotionally draining half positions, your whole dating life improves. You become clearer, More honest, more attractive, less clingy, less confused, more selective, and that energy is felt. Women can feel when a man is trying to squeeze romance out of scraps, and they can feel when a man knows his worth, expresses interest clearly, and walks away cleanly if the answer is no. That second man is always stronger. So if you want to get out of the friend zone, here is the real process. See reality clearly. Stop overinvesting in a platonic role. Pull your energy back with dignity. Reintroduce tension, direction, and masculine presence. Change the context. Make your interest visible in a calm, grounded way. Accept clarity when it comes. And if she does not meet you there, step away instead of staying trapped. That is how you get out. Not by waiting, not by hoping, not by becoming more useful, not by being endlessly available. You get out by changing the frame. And if the frame cannot change, you leave it. Because the deepest truth about the friend zone is this: it is not only a place she puts you in, it is also a place you agree to remain in. The moment you stop agreeing to it, your power begins to return. You stop chasing emotional crumbs. You stop auditioning for romance through service. You stop pretending friendship is enough when it isn't. You stop betraying your own desire just to stay close. And that shift changes you. It makes you more honest, more self-respecting, more attractive, more emotionally free. So yes, getting out of the friend zone is possible. Sometimes by changing how she sees you. Sometimes by changing how you see yourself. But either way, the path starts the same way. Stop trying to be chosen from a position of quiet submission. Show up as a man with direction, boundaries, presence, and self-respect. Then let the truth reveal itself. If she can meet you there, good. If she cannot, walk away with your dignity intact. That is not loss. That is power.